Okay, so now we're recording. Now let me go ahead and exit tones. Okay, tones are off, and now we'll mute the group. Does anybody have anything that they want to share? Something big or just about energy or something that's happening big in your life or anything? No, we're all going to be quiet. It's so funny. I remember all the times where Jude, she wanted things to be a little bit more
interactive.
Yeah, I mean, more just interactive, where we're sharing things. And, I mean, at some point I do want to get some calls to do that too. But she just get on, okay. But sometimes it's hard. I mean, when you're in this stuff, and also too, when we've got these energies activated, it can really make us feel spacey. And depending on what's happening astrologically, that can also really knock us for a loop. And so sometimes our minds don't really think about things to, that we want to bring up or talk about. And then afterwards we'll be like, oh, I meant to say this or this or this. I thought it was so important, then you don't. And I've done that as well. I'll go into these things. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I really need to share that. And I'll be like, boop, just goes right out of my brain. So it wasn't meant to be shared, I guess. Okay, let me do the meeting. Okay. So I've got everyone muted. So now it'll be nice and quiet in case anybody has family members or someone that may pop in on you, or dogs or cats, or even fall asleep, which seems to happen pretty regular for our calls. It's so funny. So I logged onto the computer to check, for the computer controls. Attendance 13. There's something about 13 with the bulk of our group, and overall, I mean, sometimes one of you will go away, but then someone else picks up. And I figured when Bobette, was in the Grand Cayman stuff, okay, we'll be one less, and someone else has come in that would, hasn't been here at different times. But there's something about that number that we've been manifesting in this group. At some point, I do think it will build as far as attendance too, but for right now, it's the magic number. And of course, like we've talked about, 13 represents, the Christ and Christic energy, and it was not a bad superstitious number. It's actually an immaculate number, and so it's really quite perfect. So, okay, well, welcome to everyone, and thank you for attending the call with us again and sharing this energy, because, I mean, we really are all an integral part of this energy. I mean, I may be the one sending out an email to get us all together and sharing about what's going on astrologically, and then energetically on deeper, individual levels for us, on a soul level, but also in the collective. But, I mean, it takes all of our attendance, choosing to be here and choosing to participate, that really activates the energy field and really creates a high vibratory rate for what we're doing. And it really does make a difference. I mean, they've always said, 2 or more are gathered, and that's true. But there's something about this magical number 13 that we're really doing. And so, Joyce, you mentioned, that you just feel really, really good. You feel like that something's happening with this energy, with this particular Scorpio new moon. All of that's really true. I mean, and all of us are feeling different things, of course. Some are feeling overwhelmed. Some are feeling like there's a lot of density, in the energy still. There's challenges. I mean, all of the above is true. And it's one of the things that most of the people are talking about with this particular new moon. I mean, new moons are always new beginnings. And, of course, that's going to happen at least every other 4 weeks, because we have a new moon every 4 weeks and we have a full moon every 2 weeks. So full moons usually are about releasing. They remove something, show, put light on something that was hidden, whatever, different things. But usually the new moon it's the dark of the moon. It's where things are birthing, and that's a regular cycle. Now we get certain moons that really seem to take us into a much more powerful either ending or beginning. Eclipses obviously, can help remove things, but eclipses also bring things in. We're definitely on the other end of the eclipse series. The last moon series really closed out that eclipse window. So this is the first moon that we've had that is taking us into a really new deep seeding of what we want to create going into next year. And again, we also have, several of the outer planets still in retrograde, which the outer planets are affecting more of the external world and not necessarily the internal world as much, but they do affect us internally too. But Pluto is still in that. We've gone out of retrograde. It's going forward, but it's going to go into Aquarius on November the 19th. We're still in that anaretic degree, and Pluto's moving really slow. Again, it's transformation and death. It goes slow. Sometimes you'll feel like you're just dying forever because of the way that Pluto works. And if it's hitting something deeply in your chart, then you're certainly going to know it. And it can take form in many ways. But the good thing about if you're on a call like this and you've been doing a lot of your own internal work, you're probably going to start, if you're not seeing those results, I would imagine you're going to start seeing results starting now. Because Pluto, it's still kind of like in a station. It's starting to go forward, but it's not really moving fast at the fast clip yet. So, and it's at that anaretic 29 degrees, and it's going to be there for this election cycle. I'm not even going to, go into the timing of the election cycle. Whatever is going on with that is much bigger picture. We can look at the minutia of it. We can look at specifics as far as what people share with their perspectives or their conditioning. At the same time, we've all agreed to whatever is happening right now, and the only way that we can really go into it is to detach ourselves from the whole dynamic, all of it. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. It's already been pre-written. Whoever was meant to go vote, they're going to go vote. Whoever's not voting, it doesn't matter. It's like the outcome's already been come forth. And so, something's bizarre, like been come forth. I don't know where that came from. I'm tired. But, okay, so the point is with that, it doesn't matter what the outcome is, whether it's one candidate or the other, and that's not just for the United States. It's actually all across the world, because there's elections going on everywhere all the time, just different time periods. But we're going through huge catharsis, individually and collectively, on soul levels, but also as a group humanity. And so what is happening now, Pluto at the 29th degree is showing just the best of the best and the worst of the worst of human expression. And it's showing how far away people have gone away from the divinity within their souls, and how they're expressing that out in the world of form. So when you look at the political arena, that's only one aspect of who we are as humans, and that the political arena is something that's been projected onto us for a long time. And if you go back, going back through the Greeks and Romans, they've always had the political world, and whoever controls politics usually controls the group of people. Now, when you listen to someone like Pam Gregory, she's a wonderful astrologer, and England. I've talked about her before, but she really is wonderful at leading people into more of the heart center, trying to get people to go into who are they internally outside of everything else that's happening in the world, because that's not who we are. Sure, there's a theater and it's playing out, and yet it's not real. All of it is an absolute facade, and it's created by people that have attempted to control us through deep hypnosis. And all of that's breaking apart. And that's part of what this 29-degree is. But it's also Saturn and Neptune placements at the end of Pisces. Pisces, again, is the hidden realm. It's the spiritual realm. And so you're going to have the higher and lower frequencies of those things played out. Neptune, again, is the dream, individual and collective dream. Saturn's the work we come here to do. As those players dance again, I mean, I've said this before, but it's worth repeating now as we go into these this really deep birthing place. It's like all of these things at those end of the degrees are really putting an exclamation point on what's dying. And what is dying is an old way of being. And I have no idea what this is going to look like on the other side of this. But know that whatever's happening in the outer world, it does not have to affect who you are internally. And we don't have to be in reaction to any of it. That really is where we step into our own mastery, is how can we be in the world but not of the world? It doesn't matter who's elected president, quite frankly. Yes, I mean, in a way it's going to affect us, but whoever gets in, there's no mistakes. There are never any mistakes. And we're either participating or not participating. And some will say that if they're not taking an action, that's not participating. I would say that that's not true. And the reason I would say that's not true is if you've ever read anything or dealt with the Heart Math Institute in Colorado, or the work of Greg Braden, Bruce Lipton, what's her name, in England, the experimentation, consciousness experiments, Lynn McTaggart, Rupert Sheldrake, talking about the morphogenetic field. If you go in and you place your attention and you get groups of people and you meditate, you're changing the world. And I think that is as powerful as anyone that goes out and attempts to project action into the world. And so many people actually that are portraying action, that they're trying to actually, quote, do something. If they're not doing something from the deepest aspect of their heart and the collective group, then there's usually some sort of agenda. And there's also some sort of reaction. We do not want to be in any reaction. I don't care who it is, your family, friends, business people. If they want to get you sucked into the politics, please release it. I mean, it's really not our business. The world will play out itself in form, however the world plays out in form. And it will be according to the soul contracts of where those people are. Now, we're all going through huge shifts. And as we fall deeper into our hearts and we allow the old parts of our mental to fall away and really take on the higher mind, we allow God to come in and work through us, and you will have action in some form based on what you're supposed to do in that moment of time. And we really are kind of in an infancy of this. I mean, we've talked about it for a long time. If you've been, listening to Jude for any amount of time, and a lot of you that worked, with her since, early 90s. I think Anna mentioned she'd worked with her since 1996. It's like, I mean, some of you know Jude for a long time and with Anna. But it's like the main thing that I think we've always been trying to do is release the old story. And again, that's the biggest gift that we can give ourselves right now, is transcending our old stories. Because when we're no longer stuck to the stories, individually or collectively, it's when we really take our power. And so it's like just giving up the reaction to anything or anyone else out there. If there's any reaction, don't judge yourself for it, but do go in and transmute it to release it, because it just doesn't serve us anymore. And and again, the other part with this too, Spirit's made this clear. We all have free will choice. We get to choose free will how we want to live and how we want to experience the world, but so does everyone else. And those that are in the dark and have been habituated by the dark, have really, sold their souls really, 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 just some not great places. They're still in their place of having to play that out. Part of it's karmic, and part of it's genetic inheritance, but part of it's just lostness. There's such a deep lostness playing out. So, and I go into all that, I guess, as I was saying, I didn't know what I was saying and how and why, but here it is. It's so funny. I never planned these things out in what I'm going to say, but Spirit's saying that's giving you a basis for the Scorpio part of the moon. Scorpio it's the secrets, it's the potential lower function of who we are, but in the hidden realms. It can also be that part of the Scorpio sting. But there's a lot of misused energy with Scorpio. And so a lot of that's what's going to be released during this time period. And I don't think there's any coincidence that this election cycle in the United States is happening on the heels of this moon. I mean, the timing is just phenomenally amazing. But on top of that death, everything that is dying is the rebirth. We're always constantly in death and rebirth. You can't have birthing without the death. It's one of the things Jude and I used to talk about a lot within her journey. She would always, explain how she just felt like she was dying so completely in one day, but then she was totally in pure joy, just immense joy within the same time period. And so it was the yin and yang. It was the totality of everything that's ever been. And so it's also why people that get stuck on the spiritual path sometimes, it's all love and light, stay in the love and light. Well, yes and no. I mean, we have to go in and meet the shadow self, and we have to go own all of those parts that we brought in this lifetime and didn't transmute. And so, yes, we want to be in the higher function and form, but there's something with this Scorpio moon, and depending on where you are, I mean, some of you have already done a lot of this deep internal work, so you're not processing a lot of the stuff anymore because you have released it. And I mean, we've been doing these moon calls now it's been over 6 months, so we've been over half a year of continuing to do this work. For the ones of us that did work with Jude, and others of you that have never worked with Jude but did your own work. I mean, obviously you've done enough so that you don't feel necessarily so bogged down all the time. And we really are coming to a place with this moon where it's going to take us to our core. I always talk about the core, but this one really is, because Scorpio is the core. And one of the other writers that I included with this didn't necessarily talk about the main planets necessarily, but she mentioned about Black Moon Lilith. And I included that particular writing this time because of the fact that what Lilith has always represented for us in the past was always the divine feminine that got scorned. And whether you're male or female, it doesn't matter. There's always some place within us that felt got scorned. We were either left out from the party, or Adam went and chose a different wife, and this could be either way. It could have been reversed in role, but for the function that we've been going through as a collective story, the patriarchy took control of the divine feminine, and so that's just the way it got played out. But Lilith is that place within all of us that there's something within our divine essence, the divine feminine that is the birthing. Lilith has a lot to do with divine birthing. But what we're doing is releasing the part of Lilith within each of us that holds the grudge, that wants to get even, that was the victim. There's that place where we have to go in and master and release that part of Lilith within each of us. But we also are birthing from that place. And so many times they say that our master comes from our deepest wound. And the bigger the wound, the more light that has to come in. It creates a bigger gaping hole. And so if our strengths do come from the weaknesses, go into your own life and look at where those things are, because that's where your strength is really going to blow open for you, I think, over the next few months. The way that Lilith is being aspected right now is powerful. I don't remember the exact configurations. I can't articulate it, but it's written in the articles. And again, for some of you that got on the call a little later, I do apologize for including so much stuff. I went to go print this, and it was like 40 pages. And I was like, I'm not going to print that. That's too much. So I just read it on the screen. But if something made it there, it was meant to be read. And you may not can read it all at one sitting. I mean, I've read different things, over the last couple of days. But, I mean, there's a lot of information there to sift through. But all of it can really assist in taking you into some place of either something to release for yourself or some inner knowing that maybe you just didn't see before. It may shift your perspective and how to see something in your own life, some dynamic, friends, family, business. But again, that's always the case. But this potent moon, and it's at 9 degrees of Scorpio. I meant to go in and read the Sabian symbol from Elias Lonsdale for 9 degrees Scorpio, and I forgot. He's so powerful with the interpretations. But there's something about how Scorpio is going to take us to our core. 9 degrees is a completion. And so whatever it is that we're doing, we're bringing that part into a completion. And so with that completion also becomes the new beginning. So look into your own life, whatever it is you've been working with, dealing with, and see what is it that wants to be birthed. And I think I went into this on a couple of the other calls that we did with regards to some of you may be looking at moving. That's one thing that I think a few of the people I've read, and maybe not everybody included, we're talking about with this new beginning. It's so potent that you may feel like you're not where you're supposed to be anymore. You may feel like the place you're living in, it could just be the particular home you're in, whether you're renting or if you own it, or you're just wherever for a certain amount of time. It may just feel like that's just not where you're supposed to be anymore. You may not be able to put your finger on it, but again, this is your intuition that's waking you up. It could be a job, it could be a place of employment, it could be a vocation, it could be a place you're volunteering. It doesn't matter what it is, however you're using your energy field, if there's anything that feels like it's not where it's supposed to be, if you just stay in your heart, you'll get moved and you'll get nudged. It may be slow. It may be fast. It may be immediate. You may just wake up one day and say, oh, my God, I can't do this anymore, and I'm going to change this. I'm going to make this change. And some people do that. They make an immediate decision on a dime. They wake up one morning and say, oop, I'm going to sell this house and move. I've heard of that before, and I'm like, God, that's crazy. I couldn't do that. And yet I did actually that very same thing back in January of 2010. Walked in and walked out of business and left the home I was gone in 3 months. It was crazy. And I mean, sometimes we do that because that's what Spirit dictates internally, because we're going toward what we're supposed to do, the soul's evolution. We're in that kind of soul's evolution now. I mean, we're coming off the eclipse point, but this particular Scorpio moon is the birthing of something new. And it is something vast. And Joyce, that's one reason why you're really feeling the anticipation of this new. It's exciting. It's fun. And so you're in a place where you've probably already done a lot of releasing, for you. But I mean, I think we've all done that. And depending on what it was with your ancestral inheritance and genetic inheritance, I mean, obviously, I've mentioned this, several times too. We each have a very unique energy that we come in with, and so we're each releasing things that other people aren't releasing. So some of us have a lot of density that we're still releasing, and I've also mentioned this too. For the people that are older, like Anna, you mentioned, you felt so out of pain last time after we did this session, and people that are older came in with a different genetic inheritance, and there's also a different ancestral inheritance of things we have to clear. And Judith, I think one reason, that Judith ended up transitioning out when she did, partly was the genetic inheritance she came in with. And sometimes I think we play with these things in some very interesting ways, because it's like, depending on whoever the teacher is that you're listening to, some people can really sit in pure presence, and I mean, they are in the wholeness. They are there. I mean, they're like the Babaji. They're the Eckhart Tolle. They are, Adi Shanti. It's like that. They really carry such a vast, just pristine awareness, and at the same time, they still have the history there that they're still trying to transmute, or there can be a genetic inheritance of either a cancer that has to come through. The hardest thing, I think, for all of us is, if something comes up that's challenging, how can we come to terms with acceptance of whatever it is? It's interesting. My previous employer had called earlier, and we were talking about some stuff, and we had one of the DJs, VJ, video jockey, but he's worked for us for years and still works actually for the place I left. But earlier this year, he came up with just a bizarre, quick-growing something with the salivary gland in the side of his jaw and his cheekbone, and it grew. A big cyst grew, and all the doctors talked about how, oh my God, he's going to die. Everybody that ever knew that it had that, they did not recover from it. I mean, that was something that had to be found fast. It had to be really activated on, but it was in such a place where, I mean, a lot of people just did not see him making a recovery. And what's really interesting, they ended up making him like a whole big study. Doctors from around the world had gotten involved, and between Tulane and Osh, I mean, everybody and the brother was looking at this particular case. And some didn't agree on how to deal with it, and some did. And anyway, they did whatever they did with it, and they treated it and did some chemo after, or actually radiation, I guess. And what's amazing now is he's in a place where it's almost non-detectable. And it was one of these scenarios where you think, oh my God, this person is going to be dead, and yet he came right out of it. And I mean, my old boss was telling me today. He said, what's interesting about this? He said that the doctors are wondering if maybe he did not get sicker because he never believed he had the cancer. He said, what do you think about that? And I said, that's actually part of it. And I said, this is part of what I tell people all the time. If you take on an identity with whatever the disease pattern is, then you've already agreed and signed on that you're going to manifest that. You're going to deal with it. I think he was in such denial. I don't know if it was denial or, but he didn't go in and make friends with the cancer. He did not identify on a core level, and it shifted it. The other part to that I was explaining to my boss is that I explained about the Heart Math Institute, and there's tons of research out there. When you get together and you have group, prayer, positive energy, all these things, and people are sending you that. I mean, he's a very popular person. He's all over Facebook, and a lot of people just really sent him all this energy. Did all that collective energy shift his timeline and take him out of the disease pattern and potential death and keep him here? It's all the above. And that's part of what I was trying to explain, to my boss was the way that dynamic works. And this is the quantum field. This is quantum healing. And I thought, well, what an amazing call for me to have right before this particular call. One of my previous employees he was going to be dead. This is like April, and he's totally changed. It's totally shifted, completely different timeline, and he created a miracle for himself. And so, and again, this happens every single day. So imagine that this new beginning could be that way for you, people you know. Maybe someone that you know is going through a really traumatic time. They've got difficult circumstances. How can we shift our reality by no longer identifying with whatever we perceive to be a problem? We really are that powerful, and it's healing mind, but it's also the heart. And if you have both of those things in coherence, if you really look at the wake-up call that's been brought to you by the circumstance, and you can go in and really own it, then you can make the shift. And it's kind of like when Anna, mentioned to me last week, she was pain-free after that call. It's like, wow. So something shifted within her, and I think it's happening for every one of us all the time, and I think that's why we continue to enjoy coming on these calls. We're shifting ourselves individually and collectively. And it's like each time Spirit takes me in and guides me through whatever it is that I'm sharing, because I honestly don't remember half the stuff I'm talking about when I do it, because it's immediacy. This is really the way Jude would talk about things. Spirit would just take her here. It's like, and so if something gets mentioned, there's something within our collective soul contracts that have agreed to hear whatever messages are brought forth in that particular call. And the same is true for when people re-listen to the call. I did notice when I had uploaded last week's call, I think it's got 23 views on it, which I think is the most for any of the calls. So I don't know if some of you are going back and listening to the call either once or twice. Some people, I think, maybe listen to it maybe 2 or 3 more times. I don't know. But if it's getting that many individual viewers now, maybe some more people are, maybe y'all are sharing it with family or friends, and people are listening more. But that's the most we've got for any of the calls so far, as far as re-listening to it on the YouTube. And but there's something about this moon, though, that's opening us up exponentially. There's something about the dynamic as Neptune is going to be approaching to go into Aries. Of course, Neptune is way out there. It's moving really slow too. So it's slowly transforming the new dream for us and opening us up to a new beginning of something. But it's like there's such transformative energy in this particular moment of whatever it is we're seeding. Because Pluto is going to go into Aquarius on November 19th. I mean, we've talked about this for quite a while, but that's literally, it's less than 3 weeks away. So imagine that you've planted the seed, a thought in your heart of something you want to create, and that seed is down there in the ground, it's starting to develop. It's opening itself up. It's starting to formulate. So what we're invited to do, I think, in this particular time is how can we assist in our own creations without controlling it or manipulating it, to allow Spirit to bring us into the highest potentiality of what we truly came here to create. And that is not something that's going to be from our minds. It's not going to be something that we're running away from. We may have circumstances in our life where we think, oh my gosh, I want to go enjoy this, join a circus and get away from this. God knows I do. And yet I have to keep attending what I'm attending. I can't just walk away from the things I am attending because there's people depending on me. I mean, I've got older people and things, and although it's like, I'm like, how did I find myself here? And yet that's part of the soul work, that we came to do. At the same time, there's something about always being in gratitude. How can you be in gratitude for the fact that you can actually do what you're doing to assist someone else because they can't do that for themselves? It really does put things in perspective. So when we stay in that gratitude, if we're grateful for what we do have, imagine what else can be delivered to us. And so, whatever it is that you have in your life, don't focus on it. If it's a cancer, like my old DJ had, don't focus on it because it may go away. And I really do think that we're that participative in our own lives. And so even though you've known other people maybe that either taught this and didn't, manifest the change, like for Judith, I mean, I've gone back and looked at that and thought, how on earth did she manifest, the cancer that she did and have to go out and still be so deeply immersed in the light? Because it was so not what she was teaching. And yet there's a part of me that Spirit says, it's just not your business. It wasn't part of something that you needed to know. And it could have been a karmic thing that her soul agreed to come here and do. I mean, she did amazing work on so many people, thousands of clients, and shifted so much for humanity. And yet there was still something in the soul that had to go through what she did with the cancer. And I don't mean to bring, her up as yet another thing, but she's something that we all have as a frame of reference, especially from a teaching standpoint. Because, when you have a teacher that's going in and sharing ways of transmuting and going into big shifts of energy and things like that, and yet they've manifested a disease pattern, it makes you want to go back and ask, well, how is that? But there was a gentleman in New Orleans I was talking to. One of my friends, Claire, had introduced me to him because I couldn't shift something. And he's older. He's in his 80s. And he doesn't work with a lot of people. But anyway, I had just a little 10-minute conversation with him, with Claire, and we went in, and something was shifted immediately. And I was like, oh, my God, how did that happen? And he just reminded me, it's like you don't want to identify with anyone else's patterns. You don't want to identify with anyone else's story. You don't want to be stuck in any of it. And he told me, he said you don't need to carry any of the story with Judith anymore. And I was like, wow. And I thought about that from from myself just as an identity, because I've worked with Jude for, 18, 19 years, and I thought, I've got to give that up too. And wow, it's like, it was a powerful moment, and something shifted in me so immediately. And it's like, it doesn't mean that you no longer know everything that you grokked, the wisdom with an individual, the soul work that you do with whoever it is. It can be, family, friends, mentors, doesn't matter. The point is, at some point you release the entire history. You no longer have to reference anything about your past. That's really where we're going right now. You no longer want to reference any of the old history. Not to be in total immaculate presence and immediacy. We no longer have to reference any of the past, none of it, because it doesn't serve us. It served us up until that moment of time, but it doesn't serve us now. And we certainly will always have our memories with different people and things, but if you're in immediacy, if you take yourself out of that immediacy at any moment of time, do you not invite something of the past to still come in and affect your future and your potentiality? It's like we glean the wisdom, and it's an internal knowing, but then we release it. And it was interesting this week, too, when I was looking at some old photos or something, because my mom had so many. And I really got clear on what Jude was telling me, this last year when I was working with her last year, before she was dying. She would tell me, so have you burned your old photos yet? I'm like, well, no, why would I burn the photos? But there was something about, and I think I mentioned this before, but I was really taken into every time we do a photo, it captures a part of our essence, and it traps it within the photo. And I hadn't thought about that before, but so many people get stuck into the story, and I thought, well, actually, I guess that does keep us in the old story, whatever it was. And we look at the timelines of our lives. We look at our kids, our grandparents. I mean, I've got pictures of my second and third great grandparents. And I look at them, I'm like, what is it about their story, that came forth within me? What is it about my ancestral inheritance that's still here that I'm mesmerized and going back and looking at a photo that's from the 1850s or 70s, and I'm like, it's like, do we become trapped by the history? And it really is one of the biggest things that Jude taught was about the history and giving up the history. And I mean, we don't think about that, and yet I think there's a part of our essence that gets trapped in photos. We trap part of our essence in our material world that we hold. There was another one of the passages I read, I think in one of the things I shared with y'all in the email, and it was talking about how can we be here and not be deeply identified with what's in our physical world, especially the material world, our possessions. And we place so much value into the possessions, into the material, and it traps us. And that's one thing that, I keep getting more and more wisdom about how I've trapped myself with the physicality of what I've inherited just, from my mom and with my family and things. And there's that density. And every time you give something away, you're like, ooh, I feel free. I feel freer, because we're not packing it around anymore. And I've really been playing with what would it look like to literally take myself down to a 0 point, even with stuff. I don't think I can go to not owning anything. But, we're still here in this 3D reality, so we still like a nice house and, some, nice furniture here and there. But at the same time, we don't need so much of what we carry with us. And I mean, this is really a time to purge. I mean, if you're ever going to purge, this is a major time of being supported energetically. Planets are here to help you transmute anything that doesn't need to go into your journey forward. So, So then there's, all that. I never know where I'm going with these calls. It's so bizarre. Okay, so there's that. Okay, so going back to this place of just the nothing. Let's say that we can all go through and really release ourselves of a lot of density, a lot of belief systems, a lot of things we've carried, angers, resentments, sufferings, all that. Where does that leave us? It leaves us in a place of just pure freedom, because we're no longer trapped by a lot of the things we still held on to. And again, it kind of goes like with the disease pattern that I mentioned with my old DJ, or even Judith. It's like, what happens when you release any potentiality that you'll have any sickness whatsoever? It really would put us in a place where I feel like we were always designed to be. We were here to be human beings that would live 200-300 years. How many people feel like they're in their 80s and yet they walk around like they're teenagers? They don't carry a density. They don't harbor the resentments, the angers, all that stuff. And it's like they can literally live. I mean, some people live over hundreds, and when you do interviews with these people and read them, hear about them, they will talk about they don't have all that. They don't have all the emotional baggage. I mean, it doesn't mean they haven't had life challenges for sure, but they don't carry all of it. And some of those people that are like 115, they may look like people that are like 70 or 80 that have had a really rough life that carry all the stuff. And all of that's pertinent, because if we're birthing something so much more vast than we've ever done before, if this moon is that potent, if all of the astrological configurations are in a place where they're supporting us into going into the deepest spiritual awareness of who we are, our deepest connectivity to God, the all that is, whatever you perceive that to be, what would that look like? What if right now we're rewriting our DNA at its very core? Can we do that? Depending on which quantum theorist you're reading, absolutely. Go pick any of them. You could pick Brian Greene. You could pick, God, I see their faces and the brain's just not even coming up with names. Miku Kaku. I mean, he's all over the map. Greg Braden, Bruce Lipton. I mean, all these people that have done all this work. Rupert Sheldrake. We really are shifting the morphogenetic field. And when you start playing in that, the political world doesn't matter, does it? Oh, sure, there's money, and there's, we'll be making money in some way, and we're all an energy field, and so I mean, you hope that you're putting out in the world to receive back good, and I do think as long as we're doing that, that whatever form it takes, whether it's either money, or it could be a roof over our head, it could be transportation, it could be things. If we're putting out good into the world, I do think we're going to get it back in form. And it does not matter what the external world looks like. That does not mean, however, that a lot of the external world is not manifesting some really dark creations for themselves to take them deeper into their hearts. And again, I mean, I'm not projecting that out that that's what's going to happen, I am saying that if certain people's souls still need to go really deep on a deep dive, and they're going to have to do it potentially through either losing material possessions, losing bank account money, losing any and all of these things can be part and parcel of part of some of these people's spiritual soul growth and evolution. It's part of their karmic inheritance. It's part of what they came here to do. It may be hard to watch. It would not surprise me if we were to go through another type of a Great Depression, but it wouldn't have to necessarily affect us in the way that it would affect a lot of people. If something happens where it collapses the old financial system before it gets us transferred to the new financial system, let's just potentially, put that, if that's happening, and they were to switch us over to quantum banking, which they've been talking about. If something like that were to happen, one would hope that whoever's in control of that type of banking system would have it in such a way where it does take care of us in the bigger picture, where we're not being affected, where it protects people's money, where people can't have things stolen from them. You can't have an ID stolen anymore. Assuming that those things can be protected. I don't know what form that's going to take, but all of these things, again, that's Pluto and Capricorn. It's structures, financial structures, educational structures, manufacturing structures. All of that, the old world is ending. So no matter what comes in form, don't attach to whatever's changing, no matter what it is. Know that your soul is here to navigate whatever changes are coming, and that you have the capacity to literally stay grounded no matter what's going on. And things could get to that point where you may feel like there's a whole tsunami coming towards you. You may feel like, that you're jumping and going to drown in the ocean. You're not going to drown. I'm telling you, you're not going to drown. It's one thing to be able to be floating in oceanic presence. It's another to know internally that God has your back. And I think that's really what we're going to be going into. The other reason I feel like we're going to be going into something like that is because it's like the energy is kind of like taking us into the eye of a needle. It's kind of like being at the end of an era, the end of a dream, and it is a collective dream. And again, this is 2025 all the way till, I think I've said, like January or March of 2026, when Saturn and Neptune really get into Aries. I think the rest of this year into next year, year and a half, potentially have a lot of rocky elements to it. Does your version of reality have to be rocky? I would say the answer is no. But again, it's going to depend on how you're perceiving your reality and what you place the value of your existence into. If you're placing all your value into the material world and everything you've got and all this external, the false reality and the false matrix, then you may perceive yourself that your life is going to be falling apart. I think if you're on this call or listening to this video at any point in the future, then that's not going to be true for you. I think you're going to be grounded enough that no matter what happens in the external world, you're going to have a connectivity between who you are and your divine self. In other words, God's working with you on a bigger picture, on a bigger timeline to bring in the highest potentiality for you in your reality. It does not mean we won't be working with people to assist them in shifting the way they perceive reality. And again, I don't know how far we're going to have to go down with this. Hopefully, a lot of souls have been shifting on their own. Another thing that could also happen, someone had brought this up, just the very planetary configurations and shifts could literally shift reality in such a way where it may bring enough people in their perception of reality, it may shift their perceptions without them having to go through a dark night of the soul. Now, I don't know if that's the way it would play out, but we really could have something like they used to call the event. It could be something that just happens, and people could just wake up one day, and they wake out of the sleepwalking. I mean, I really don't know what this is going to look like, but I do think that in an infinite reality creation where even the best of the possible things that can happen to us, I do think that those are higher potentialities that could happen. So nothing is off the table here. That's the kind of energy we're in. And it's also, I think, indicative of how do we want to play. We don't want to limit ourselves in where other people are with regards to, I think the last call I mentioned about mythology. So much of astrology is deeply immersed in millennia-old mythology. We keep perpetuating the same story and the same archetypes, and yet, for some reason, we don't let go of the archetypes. I am suggesting to you that you can let go of some of these old archetypes. You don't have to play out the victim anymore. You don't have to play the savior. There's no one to save. You are your own savior. Everyone is their own savior. People have to take the hero's journey. If they feel like they're, losing money, if they feel like they're losing identity, you have to let them lose the money and you have to let them lose the identity. I have gone through so much loss of identity in the last so many years with Jude. I would go through a shift and she's like, oh, you're just letting a part of that 3D reality go. You're just dropping this, dropping density, dropping this. It's dropping the story. And sometimes the psyche can feel so lost when you're dropping your story, because then you're left with who are you? The main thing to know is that you're always complete. No matter what is happening in the outer world of form, you are always complete. If you feel like something is, if it's taking you to a place where you want to hyperventilate, if it's taking you to a place where you feel like you don't know how you would function or live, go sit in that space. Don't go into reaction with it. Go be with yourself, whatever's happening. What if it's just another initiation? It's taking you into a deeper level of awareness of who you are. And you're just letting everything else go on the timeline. That's really what we came here to do, is shift the timelines. And I know some of that seems very daunting. I appreciate that all of you have stuck around for all of this. We're up to 16 people now, I see, on the call list here. So, yeah. So I think we're all invited to, again, with this moon, and I'm about to take us into a deeper meditation part with this, so we can really let Spirit come in and really just burn off all the dross. Any of the last amounts of residue. I'm going to invite Saint Germain and the Violet Flame and all of the Ascended Masters, like I always do, through Infinite Presence, all of the Archangelic Kingdoms, the Mighty Elohim Builders of Form, and all the Elemental Kingdoms. I mean, not that we're ever separate from any of these, and you can do this at any time if you feel like you need assistance. at any part of your day, bring in all that, and you bring in the all the adamantine particles and the diamond Christ light and all of the 12th golden rays. It's like you bring in all these energies. They're all there. This is the unseen world. And so here's the other part. So we've talked about all of these things that we see in the 3D world of form. What happens when you continually play like this and you start working more and more with the unseen world? I do that all the time, all day long. It's why I'm able to shift a lot of what I'm able to shift even for myself. It's like you go in, and when you start really working with the unseen world, this is what Jude did all the time. This is spirit. This is your divine self. It's like they will come and meet you. There's a whole host of beings out there that have already done all their transcendent work, and they live in transcendence of this dimension. They just go multidimensional, and they're everywhere at any one given point in time. If you've been having weird dreams, go in and just observe them. Don't judge them. If there's anything that feels like lower density things, like you feel like someone's either chasing you, if you feel like there's bizarre circumstances or things that play out, it's really just the way your mind is attempting to release some of the stories that you carry, because none of that exists. And just to remind you, when we go into the dream state, it's always when your physical body is asleep. So your essence, the core of who you are, your soul doesn't ever sleep. Your soul is eternal. So when the body is at rest, the soul goes out and plays with everyone else's soul. There's no separation. So if there's any place within your soul work that you still have to come here to do, dreams will come forth to attempt to give you clues on places to work through, things you need to either release, let go of. If you have a recurrent dream where it's bringing you in a place of misery when you wake up, go in and release that. You absolutely have the power to go in and call on the Akashic Records. You can call on Metatron. Metatron deals with time and space. Kuan Yin is peace. You can call Yeshua, Jesus, however you do that, Mother Mary. Call in any and all beings to assist you in releasing whatever it is that you're holding and carrying. When you do that, you're also clearing it on the cellular level within your body. It's like you're giving up whatever miscreated thought form or distortion that you took on at some points of time within the progression of your soul. It may not even be this lifetime. Usually things like that are carried and imprinted on every different aspect of timeline that you're operating in. And so go in and ask for these things to be cleared on every timeline. So, okay, on that note, let's get really still and go in and do a really deep dive on releasing anything that's holding us back here at this particular point in the progressions of our souls, the individual soul expression, but also the different aspects of our souls that are operating on different timelines, as well as our oversoul. The oversoul always knows what it's doing, but as we clear all of these things through multiple timelines, we allow ourselves to come to one more cohesive timeline where we take pure and total ownership of ourselves throughout the whole time-space continuum. It's like we're dissolving all of those other separate aspects of who we are and bringing everything into wholeness. We are remembering, pulling all the members of ourselves back into our multidimensional expression. To feel the lightness of this energy coming in. Jude always used to say that when she would do workshops and retreats and stuff, she would be working on us, quite a bit before with all the masters and everything. I do think that's always true. And I do think with these calls, we are being attended from the moment we get on the call. I think we're being attended constantly, no matter what. But there's something about when we place our attention onto the call that the more undivided attention that we place on ourselves and each other and the healing transformation of the energy within these calls, we're all coming in with an intent. And when you place intent for healing into a call or into a moment of time, the universe has to come meet you. I think one of the reasons that we're all in a place where we continue to shift on a, pretty much an immediate basis with these calls is because they are a regular thing that we've been attending. And I think that the more you go in and do this work on a constant level for yourself, the more you'll be able to shift and gain more clarity even as we do these calls here. Again, everything is immediacy. So if there's any additional places where you feel stuck, if there's relationships that you have in your life that you just say, you know what, I really don't want that in my life anymore, you just ask Spirit to take care of it. And literally, just like clockwork, or just like a time capsule being released, circumstances can come forth that release certain people out of our lives. Just think about whatever it is that you want to release. Because with that release, it's a type of death. But with that death also comes the rebirth. Everything that you're releasing, everything we're all releasing, makes space for the new to come in and formulate. Perhaps you've been attending these calls now enough where you're able to track within your own body how much lighter you feel. Perhaps you're able to track when you're able to release something. Something may come into your mind, and then all of a sudden, it's gone just like that. The more we do this, the more we're retraining the quantum and divine aspect of who we are to be more in alignment all the time. The more we release, the more room we make for our divinity to bring in the highest potentialities for us to come play. What is it that you want to create? Again, we live in an infinite universe. 8 billion plus souls are creating in this way. Except how many of them are unconscious? How many are still releasing millennia of all these patterns, all these habituated energies, all the ancestral inheritance, the karmic inheritance? How many people are still playing out through the lower timelines? And yet, it's always perfect. There are people that are still playing out so many levels of deep karmic residue. And guess what? That's part of their soul contract. Politicians that are playing out all of these distortions. And let's face it, when we look at them, they're truly distorted. That's part of their soul contracts. We can certainly put out into the field for peace and comfort and a shift of reality where everyone lives in equanimity, where everything has a more evenly distributed grace. Let's call it that way. We can ask for the highest potentiality for all souls on the planet. At the same time, and this is where it's difficult for us, that won't always happen on our timetable. We have to allow for the complexity of someone else's soul path to play out. This will bring in circumstances, though, where we, the people, will probably have to stand up to people that have attempted to control us, people that are still in their hypnosis, and we may have to tell someone, no, I'm not going to do that. You may have to tell some established authority, no, I'm not going to do that. Whatever that is. And again, every single person will take their power in a very unique way, depending on their circumstances and where they are playing out their karmic inheritance on the planet. For instance, people in the United States are playing out similar stories, similar timelines, similar circumstances based on the collective genetic inheritance and ancestral inheritance of who we have been over time through decisions we've made in past lives. For instance, if we've played out in certain world wars or civil wars, if we've contributed into distorted thought forms and patterns in ways that hurt our fellow mankind, there's no bypassing our karma. There is going in and transmuting and meeting ourselves in the miscreations and shifting ourselves into different timelines. But we can't keep creating in the old. The same would be true for anyone operating in any other circumstances on the world stage, anywhere. No matter what country they're in, You don't know what the karmic inheritance is of any and all individuals, but also the group souls. Again, we're playing out similar types of things, and yet each soul group is playing out very unique lessons within their own identities, individually and collectively. It's why most countries in Western cultures have played out a dominant reality within our fields, and we're attempting to clear those things karmically. If we've bombed other countries, if we've killed a lot of other people through different lifetimes within the wars, it's going to play out similarly for people like in the Eastern countries with Russia and Asia, China, Japan. But the actual dynamics will be unique to what they created in their past as well. As a general rule, war has been one of the most heavy distortions that was ever projected onto mankind for us to play out. War was never something that we came in as part of our divine blueprint. That never existed. We created that distortion as play. When we were trying to figure out how to go as far away from God as we could, that's what we created, was an anti-God event. And there are so many levels and layers of those distortions and miscreations. These are the things we're attempting to create closure for and take into transcendence in these times. Again, it does not mean that you won't see political leaders throughout the world that have to play out some of the dark karmic stuff because that's necessary for the evolution of their souls. It does not mean, however, that we have to be drawn into their stuff. It's where evolving humans are stepping into their own mastery by not just doing whatever everyone else is doing. We no longer have to stay on those timelines. We no longer have to stay stuck under someone else's command and control that no longer has our best interests at heart. This is one of the most difficult things that we do. Is to release all of those stories. This is years, it's decades, it's centuries worth of old stories that have been projected onto us. I'm telling you, you no longer have to carry any of that. Many of you will feel such a lighter structure within your cellular body just because it's being released. You no longer have to carry it. It's that immediate. For many of you, the chakra system has been worked on and cleaned and cleared to be brought into a much deeper coherence for the last, well, for each of you it'll be a different time period. But for all of you, you're in a place where you're carrying so much of a lighter sense of who you were. Do you feel how much lighter your mind feels? Go in and track that. Feel into your brain and feel how different you are today from where you were just 2 weeks ago with the last call. Now, some of you will track a much bigger shift than others, but some of you will feel like you're a completely different person from last week or from 2 weeks ago. And indeed you are. But that's always the case. It's always true. Every nanosecond, you're different than you were the previous nanosecond. It's just that we're going through such an intense acceleration in our perceptions of reality, because the morphogenetic field is shifting so intensely now. It has to come meet us where we are. The speed at which humanity's awakening is shifting is off the charts. Part of it is happening because of all the solar flares, all the galactic shifts we're going through. There are also a lot of aspects that have been happening where the galactic center, the supergalactic center, the great attractor, these are points within our solar system that when they align to us are dissolving our old reality. It's something that's happening over time. And yet they are also breaking apart the time-space continuum that keeps us locked here in the physicality of time. And science is coming out to back that up. Feel how much lighter that your heart feels. You may not be able to track all of the different feelings that have gotten released within this particular call. And yet, by the end of the call, you may feel so much lighter because of what got transcended, and you won't even have any awareness that it left you, except for the fact you feel lighter. So much of this is happening through such an immediate shift in awareness, you won't be able to track how much falls away. Place your awareness down in the dantian. The dantian is your stomach. That's where we store all of the emotional baggage in all of our lifetimes. It's all down in our stomach. It's why so many people, when they feel guilty about that they've done something, their stomach can hurt. Or if they've lied about something, the stomach hurts. Or if they're out of alignment in some shape, form, or fashion, it always takes place down in the stomach. It's why people emotionally eat. They're trying to feed a feeling that's down there that they can't go meet. Let's place our collective awareness within our stomachs. In true cosmic awareness, we would all feel whatever's happening in this collective stomach that we're in, because there's no separation. Don't go feeling around for someone else's stored, unprocessed emotions. Just go and check in on yours. Do you feel how much more immediate that shifts are today within the things we're talking about than it's ever been on any of our other calls? This is part of what Joyce was feeling into when she first talked about, she felt so excited with this call that something felt different. Something is different. We are giving up so much of our density, so much of the story, so much of the stuff that we thought made up our reality, so many of the things that we identified with. It almost feels like this call we've been on has been 5 minutes. In some ways, it feels like it's been 5 hours. It feels like it's been playing tricks with my perception of reality and time. Part of it's because we're giving up much more of the time, the separation of time. How amazing that so many of us chose to be on the call tonight. We're all supporting each other on releasing our individual stories and journeying, but we're also holding space for these amazing new creations, this new creatrix. Let's call it creatrix, where we're working one-on-one in immediacy with Mother, Father, God, and the whole entire company of heaven. All the ascended masters, their infinite presence, the entire archangelic kingdom, the Elohim builders of form, and the elemental kingdoms. And Saint Germain and the violet flame is absolutely burning off anything else that we no longer need to carry. Some of you may feel like you've gone into a deep trance, and indeed, some of you have, depending on what you came here to release. If you don't know anything else right now, know that all of those old stories that go back through millennia of time, through all of the timelines, all your karmic inheritance, your ancestral inheritance, the genetics, feel every single nanosecond of it being cleared away. So that you can create with your divine blueprints with Mother, Father, God. You allow the divine to work through you and with you, for you, and for the highest pristine awareness in your reality. As your awareness takes over your entire body and all of the atomic and subatomic structures and cells, and on the molecular level, some of you may even feel your heartbeat in the totality of your body. You may feel it within your skin. You may feel it within all your organs. You may feel your heartbeat in your brain. Your heartbeat could become so powerful that you wouldn't even be able to keep your eyes closed. I knew this would be a powerful healing call for all of us tonight. And I think it's even surpassed what I envisioned that it would be. But I couldn't have envisioned it any higher. I had to get out of the way to allow ourselves to be completely brought into an amazing space with Spirit. When I got out of the way, I didn't place any limitation on what could be achieved or the space that we would bring ourselves into. When we let go of any preconceived notion of anything in life is when we allow for the miraculous to come forth. You are sitting in that miraculousness right now. If your mind does feel spacey, allow that to just be. The vibratory frequency that we are holding is shifting the totality of who we are, but it's also shifting every single nanosecond, every nanoparticle around us. And it's being put out and sent out through infinity. This has certainly been one of the most powerful and healing calls we've ever done. Many of you process this energy by going into deep sleep. And that's how you have to handle the energy. It's all perfect. You're invited to stay in this quiet space, in this deep oceanic presence, as long as you can. The more you can hold this frequency, the more you will embody the frequency. On behalf of all of you, I thank each of us for having attended each other with this event tonight. And for anyone who comes across this on the YouTube channel that listens to this meditation, when you've listened to it, it's perfect for the particular moment of time that you listen to it. And the frequencies that you are looking to meet will meet you in this call, in this replay of our meditation this evening. Everything is timeless. Everything happens for a reason. And we always find exactly what we need in any given moment based on the progression of our soul in that particular moment of time. Eternal love and infinite blessings to all of you. And again, stay in this space as long as you can. Love to you all. Thank you.